Okay, so point of interest in Malacca, Malaysia. Came across this in our wanders. I see they've welded the torpedo doors closed. Always a good thing. So this is a 70 class French diesel electric sub by the looks of it. Probably a reconnaissance sub. Apparently it was given to the Malaysians, or they bought it as a training sub for you know, training in submarine warfare or whatever. It didn't last long, fell to disrepair or whatever, and they had to pull it out, but they made a museum out of it, which is kind of cool, and I'm into subs, so had to see it. As well as I see these fighter jets here, which is pretty cool actually. They're Northrop Grumman F5 Tiger II is what this is. Boy, they're sure very small, eh? It's a very small target to hit. Once you're actually beside them, they're very small. Pretty interesting. The Grumman Tiger II. Yikes. Inside the jet motor. Pretty cool. Boy, they're sure small. Oh, this one has a lot of damage on the wing. It looks like it was hit or something. Interesting, interesting. Yeah, the Grumman Tiger II. Very cool. What is it? Oh yeah. Oh, that would be good. And then what's this? This one is the Douglas A4 Skyhawk. Interestingly enough, it doesn't say which one's which, so that might be the Skyhawk, or this might be the Skyhawk. One's a Grumman, one's a Skyhawk, not sure which. Oh look, these are the torpedo carrying on the wings, whatever they call those. Interesting. Huh. Missiles or whatever those are. And look, this is the fueling, maybe this was the fueling bay at one point, so they could fuel underway. I'm not sure, I'm just spitballing. Huh. Oh, there's another one there? Okay, maybe that's the one, and this is just to hold it from tipping over. Oh no, I guess those guys are to slow it down when it lands, probably on an aircraft carrier. Pretty cool. Malaysian Air Force. Oh, here comes the school. Okay.
Yeah, let's get into the sub.
Yeah, we're gonna move along into the sub before the school gets here. Interesting, all the kids are arriving. Okay, moving along. Yeah, look at this. Those planes have been cut off up top. Notice how small they are?
Yeah.
Those are not full size, I guarantee you. Those have been bucked off. There's no way those caused this big sub to dive. Okay, we're gonna go in. Pretty impressive. I love submarines. I've always loved them. They're pretty impressive pieces of engineering. Humans are amazing. Okay, coming in now into the torpedo bay again. You got the watchkeeper's bunks up top. For the torpedo guys up here, the bunks. And I'm not sure what that was up in there, but you got more bunks up here on both sides. These will be the racks that held the torpedoes. for all the bays. There was 4 torpedo doors, if I remember correctly, or maybe 6. 4. Diesel electric sub. So the torpedoes would have sat in these holders here, these half circles, and then they would have slid into these tubes in here on both sides, and then the doors would have been closed, and then they would have flooded the tubes and then launched the torpedoes out of the actual tubes with compressed air. And then, of course, the propulsion system would be programmed and kicked in, and then there would be either a pre-programmed position of detonation, or there would have been a sonar array on the actual torpedo to hone in on metal under the water and, of course, find its target. They usually would have that program to turn on once it was well away from their own sub, in case it crazy Ivan'd on them and circled back and blew themselves up, right? So this is the forward part of the sub, the torpedo bay, and now we're climbing into the acoustic operation area, the sonar area. Look at these tiny bunks too. Pretty cool. Okay, moving into the acoustic area here. This would have been the con of the sub, and this here would have controlled the planes here to allow the planes to angle down and dive, which would create the sub to go down. This would be the conning tower, or the periscope, I should say, right here. That would go up, that they could go up and down. I don't see the sight anywhere, but there would have been a sight here somewhere attached to it, which I don't see, interestingly enough. At any rate, very cramped quarters, hey? But very cool. Very old school technology, man. This is like 50s technology. If you look at it, 50s, maybe 60s. No, 50s. Here's your navigation chart table, and all your sonar array. There would have also been a radar array in here somewhere for surface. They show a Furuno there, but I highly doubt that was the Furuno radar at the time. Anyways, this is the command center. The con is what they call it, the con. And here is actually the, there is the sighting I talked about. That guy would be running the periscope right there. And you can see him clearly doing that in the video. A lot different than the American submarines. A lot lower technology. And fire suppression system there, and this would be probably the bedroom dining room for crew right here. Okay, there would be an officer one here somewhere. Bedroom for commanding officer. So captains, this is your room right here, and this is, I believe, the bedroom. This is the crew, the officers' mess, right here. The officers' mess, and then there would be more accommodation here. Crew bunks and accommodation, right here. And there would be the crew mess. Yeah, there's a school here. This would be the crew mess down here. And then crew sleeping quarters here. And so we've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3 on the other side because it's a rounder shape. There she is at sea. And yeah, you know, it's very tight quarters, these old subs. They're not much different now. Yeah, there's Kim. This would be the crew mess right here. Bedroom and dining for crew. Yeah, there it is. Bedroom and dining for crew. Yeah, we've got a whole school in here full of kids and flu and everything else, so we're just staying out of the way. They'll whistle through. They don't give a crap about this. They're just being put through this as part of their curriculum. The French, you know, they're pretty good at nautical stuff, so it would have been in good working order when they gave it to them. It's a huge piece of equipment. Notice how small it is, and down below is all batteries. Is all batteries down below. So you live in like an eighth of the sub, and the rest is batteries and fuel. I'm just going to turn you off till these kids go. Okay, back on the move in the French CROISSANT French-Malaysian submarine called CROISSANT. And back on the move. Yeah, so you guys in Coast Guard, if you think your cabins suck, take a look at this, right? And be happy. Okay, moving along. Here is another part of the galley, guys. Very small. Here, take a peek in there. Very small galley.
There's another part right in front of you too.
There's another part of the galley here.
Very split up, eh?
Yeah, there would have been multiple people working. They're probably, well, maybe, or maybe there would have been one cook. I don't actually know. I'm just going to take a peek at the pressure hull. So here we can see cork. Look. So this is one of the subs like World War II, actually. The U-boats, halfway through the World War, they started corking their subs. The reason being, it insulates, it stops condensation. They found that they were filling up with water and people were getting sick because of the humidity. So they corked it, and you can clearly see this is actually cork. And this would be the thickness of the actual pressure hull. Look at that. I don't know, that's probably 2.5 inches of solid steel. And then there would have been another, on the outside, you can see it here, there would have been another cladding right here. And between the two is cork. And that would have actually been for acoustic dampening. So there's the internal pressure hull, which is a couple of inches thick solid steel. Then there would have been what appears to be about 5 or 6 inches of cork. And then the actual outer, not the pressure hull, but the cladding of the hull, designed for, for protection against depth charges and stuff like that, or collision at sea. Between the two is 5 inches of cork, and that would have quietened the sound of the sub down, like people moving around in the sub, shoes dropping, pots and pans, that kind of stuff. It would have dampened that sound down so people, couldn't hear it as easily. Acoustic couldn't hear it. Oh, this is the one toilet, guys. Here it is. The one toilet. There it is. And the one shower. There's Hitler's famous U-boats, but yeah, this would have been the acoustic area, like I said, navigation. You can hear they've got what, and it pinged, and basically it hits anything metal it would hit, and then you could hear it on the hull, and it would bounce back, and they timed the difference, and they could figure out precisely how far away that piece of steel was from their boat. And that was basic sonar. Later on, they came up with Aztec, which was a type of acoustic sonar also that kind of sounded like gravel on the hull, and it would give them could give them size, distance, and speed, which is how the British actually ended up winning the war against the U-boats, was that they had that ability to tell size, distance, speed, depth. And don't let us in here, and the engine compartment, which I have not seen yet. They probably pulled them out. Machine control, MCR. Yeah, there it is, MCR back there. Too bad we're not allowed in there, because that would have been a great experience. I'm guessing they're open valve diesels. much like the old Bartlett had, you guys. Oh, they've got the watertight door to the engine compartment chained. Again, I don't know what this was. Machine control room. This is your MCR, boys. Back home, this is your MCR. There it is. This would have been the officer of the watch, the engineering officer. Would have been in here, standing the watch while the oilers were down getting the job done. In terms of, yeah. So, interesting stuff. Just a tiny head. I'm gonna backtrack again. Look at this. These are the cabins. So again, you Coast Guard guys, you know, we've got it pretty good. I was gonna say, but my Malaysian isn't what it used to be, you know? So it's hard for me to... Oh yes, hopping in. Here we are. So I'm actually at the sticks of the planes. Check this out. So pulling down would have adjusted the plane angle down and the boat would have dove. You would have had a degree reading here. Right there it is, right here. There's your directional and degree reading. So there's your up and down directional and degree. So as you pull the stick, and there would have been one for each side. Each plane, one on either side. And that would have been your depth gauge right there. In meters, sorry, right there, that's your depth gauge. And that's your pipe. And this is old, folks, because look, this isn't actually a speaking pipe. There's a tube connected to it, and the tube runs through the sub back to command to the con behind you. And it's not radio, it's literally voice through a tube. Bear in mind again, bear in mind how bloody hot it would have been in here with those diesel electrics. Those engines would have never cooled off, right? And then the electrics would have been going, and then the diesels would have been running at the surface. They had snorkels that they could run just below the surface too. I know that the Russian attack, the F-class, Foxtrot class subs, my friends, I know those were 75 men. And that was a slightly smaller machine than this. So that was an F-class reconnaissance, Foxtrot class Russian reconnaissance sub. Basically designed for scouting out the Canadian and American coast, hey, during the Cold War. I've been on one of those too. And back to the MCR. And then the aft machine space back there. There would have been aft torpedoes too. Most of them carried torpedoes aft, which you couldn't load. Once the torpedoes were full, the tubes were full, they'd load them in port, and they'd load the front of the sub first, and then the stern, and they'd fuel it forward and load the torpedoes and stores forward. And then the sub would literally sink in the bow and the stern would come up in the air. And I'm coming out now. The stern would go up in the air and then a crane would come and they would load the torpedoes in the stern with it up in the air and then reballast her. And there was no reloading more torpedoes at sea. You only had those 4 tubes aft, or sometimes even just 2. And the reason for carrying torpedoes aft, there's a good reason for it. You ask, why would they carry torpedoes aft? The reason why, guys, is because submarines are blind, used to be blind in the stern. In other words, they couldn't listen off their stern. Anything behind them was null and void in terms of their listening capability, because the sound of the propeller screw turning would create a distortion, and they couldn't hear behind them. So various outfits, they had protocols, so they would cruise along, guys. And then every so often, each government, each naval vessel, each captain had its own, his or, and not her at that time, or they, his own methodology. And either at the top of the hour, bottom of the hour, the quarter of the hour, they would do a hard over. And they would, out of the blue, spin the boat and turn around real quick. In the event that they were being followed, a sub could sneak in the baffles. And interestingly enough, on this particular sub, unless those may have been tubes there, but I don't think so. It's a 5-blade prop too. Check that out.
So, yeah, this submarine didn't appear to have aft torpedo tubes in it at all. But if you do note up on the planes on the stern by the prop on the port side of the boat, there's actually an exhaust there. It appears to be an exhaust, and that would have been for the engine diesel exhaust to vent when they're running on the surface, so that there's no plume of smoke coming up that can be seen at distance. So yeah, if you look on the planes on the port by the rudder on the horizontal planes, there's actually a little, what appears to be an exhaust running out there, which would have gone out into the water and just would have dissipated the smoke and heat from the exhaust, just so it wasn't visible at distance by aircraft or by other vessels.
The Russians called it Crazy Ivan, and so they would pull on the half of the hour, or on the skipper's orders, they would pull a 180 just to ensure nobody was following them in their what's called the baffles on a submarine. At any rate, a very interesting class of boat. It looks to me like it wasn't an attack sub, because it has no stern torpedoes. Attack subs are very maneuverable. This has very small planes. In fact, it has double rudders, upper and lower, but this isn't a very maneuverable sub. So yeah, I guess like they said, it was a training sub. But anyways, very cool. I hope you guys enjoyed the tour. The name of the boat is CROISSANT. Very fitting for a French submarine. The boat CROISSANT. And there it is. Okay, I'll leave you guys to it. And then up top, you can see there's a radio direction finder up there on the top of the conning tower there. And they would have driven it from up there, by the way, too, on the surface. They would have gone up a ladder and driven. You can see a door on the side where they would have boarded in port along the rail there. So anyway, it's 1,510 tons. It's a diesel electric, 67 meters in length. France is the country of origin. Date of launching, interesting, 23rd of October, 76. Boy, that's hard to believe. What a frickin' old technology boat for 1976. And then pulled out of service in 2012, it looks like. 300 capacity, 7 officers, 58 crew members, 300 meters. Diving depth, 300 meters. It's 12 knots submerged and 20 on surface. Somebody CROISSANT, Augusta 70 Marine, is a naval submarine that was decommissioned by the French in 2001. The submarine was reactivated when the Malaysian government bought it to Scorpene submarines, and this submarine was used as a training platform for Malaysian submarine crew. The CROISSANT refurbished project officially began on the 30th of October 2003 before being fully completed on the 20th of October 2005. Was used by the Royal Malaysian Navy to begin training missions at sea to train all crews of Prime Minister class submarines from the 21st of November 2005 until completion July 2009. The submarine was then finally disposed of by the Ministry of Defense by handing it over to the Malacca state government, used as a museum. Look, it came in on this too. Look at this. These are actually the lifting cradles. Look, there's big lugs there, big eyes, welded. So this would have been a massive lift with dual cranes or something, and it would have had a 4-point lift there. And then over here, they would have found the balance point, and there would have been another 4-point lift. Yep, right here. So this would have been actually the lifting cradle, and they just lifted it right on and came in and dumped it down right here. And you know, there would have been a machine gun on it too. A couple on the bow, probably. Anti-aircraft machine guns.
So that was the tour of the CROISSANT. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, it's always interesting to see some history there. Cool boat. And feel free to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Okay, thanks.